Joey, have you ever been in a Turkish prison?
Hey, welcome back, Talflater folks. Jeff and the OG are here in the OG truck. Jeff's over here to there he is. So we're cruising right along. You might be able to hear the freeway behind us at 125 miles per hour. No, we're actually just sitting out here in the shade for a minute. Hey, I wanted to tell you real quick, some people were nice enough to ask to hear about the little story about my daughter and I in Turkey. It's a long story. I'll make it very short for you. If you're not interested in this sort of thing, pop in your favorite Taylor Swift video, and we will be right back with you. For those of you who want to wait around, though, back in early July, on July 6th, the OG family was snorkeling off of a little beach called Pisiliamos in the island of Samos, Greece, where my family's from. Beautiful little island, beautiful little beach, looks a lot like Hawaii. We're out snorkeling, my two daughters, my niece and I. My more adventurous daughter, the youngest one, Megan, who you'll see in the video here, she and I decided to swim out to a little strip of rocks, which you'll see on the map here. And the little strip of rocks turns out to be in Greece. We saw the Greek flag on it. We sat there for a few minutes, and then we noticed a little round island about the size of a football field, a little bit further out.
Does that have a house on it?
It has a little building on it. We never got close enough to see.
I saw that on Google Maps. I'll show you that in
I'm not sure if it's a little weather monitoring station or if it's a little shrine or what, but there was a flagpole on it. We weren't able to tell what flag was flying from there, so we decided, hey, let's snorkel out to there. Didn't look all that far.
How far do you think it was?
My estimate was that it was less than a mile. And
okay.
I swim that kind of distance in laps, so I thought, hey, no problem. What we didn't know is that at 3 p.m. every afternoon, there is a major riptide that comes through there and sweeps everything out towards the Mediterranean Sea. We were actually in the Aegean Sea. So, and this is a little strait, I can't remember the name of it, in between Greece and Turkey.
It's like a little channel, right?
Yes, little channel. And that's actually why, for those of you who are in a Navy or know these things, I find later, that's why in the evening it channels all the water outward. So just like a little river. So we were snorkeling out to this smaller island. We get off course. We adjust ourselves and swim harder for the little island, and we get further off course. And pretty soon my daughter notices that we are just not getting any closer. In fact, we're getting farther and farther and farther away from this little island. We look back and realize that we are several miles off of the coast of Greece now, and we're being carried out to sea towards mainland Turkey. And if we miss mainland Turkey, we're going to be out in the Mediterranean Sea. So,
and that island is very close to Turkey. When I first saw it, I thought it was Turkish territory or whatever.
Well, as we find out, it has a Turkish flag hanging on it, and it is in Turkish waters. So yeah, we weren't even really allowed to swim out and touch that island. Now, I will say that 100 years ago, my great-great-grandfather used to swim from Samos to Turkey, but locals know a little bit more about the current than the old OG, so I'm sure he picked a better time of day. So we are swept out. Let me fast forward 3.5 hours later. OG has stripped off his mask because I can't breathe out there. We're adrift for 3.5 hours. There was a period there where I was pretty sure that myself and my daughter were not going to pull through this. And I'm not really even joking about that. I didn't think we were going to make it. The current started pulling us towards mainland Turkey after a while. And when we were within about a mile away from mainland Turkey, we started seeing a sailboat way off on the horizon. Well, the first sailboat goes north and misses us. About a half an hour later, a second sailboat appears on the horizon. We noticed that being a mile away from mainland Turkey, we think that the sailboat is going to be half of that distance, and we should be able to yell at it and catch their attention. Sure enough, as they get a little bit closer, we're able to flail and kick up water and hoop and holler long enough for them to notice us. Thank God they didn't have the radio on. The captain tells us later, we could have had the radio on, we could have had the motor up louder. There's a million reasons why we might not have heard you, but we heard you. So they circled us a couple of loops while they called into Turkish Coast Guard. For those of you who are following international politics, sailors can't just pick up people in the water anymore out there, even if they're drowning, because of the refugee crisis. People trying to get from Syria into Turkey and then on into Europe through Greece. And my family's island, Samos, has a big refugee camp on it right now. People trying to slip in for refugee purposes. So they had to get permission from the Turkish Coast Guard to pluck us out of the water. They eventually did so. Super nice guy, Mr. Kalsin. If he's watching this, thank you very much. Him and his buddy gave us water, gave us a plate of fruit, gave us towels to wrap up in. He let me use his cell phone to call Mrs. OG back on the island, because at this time we're 3 hours missing. And Mrs. OG, who likes to freak out instantly, actually gave us the benefit of the doubt and waited for a little bit. She wanders into a nearby restaurant, and an old lady tells her through a translator that if her family was missing out in that water, and she points out there, she says there's not much of a chance that they survived, because she tells her last year they lost 70 people. 70 people died in those exact waters right there trying to cross over to Greece. So Mrs. OG is a little bit freaking out right now. Her husband and her daughter are presumably gone, and she has now notified the Greek Coast Guard to come and try and find us. And she tells me later that she thinks it's going to be a recovery mission and not a rescue mission. Meanwhile, Mr. Calcine in the sailboat has to take us north up to this little town of Kushadasi. Actually, it's a pretty decent-sized town. The Coast Guard comes out, and they meet us, and you'll see the video here. You've probably seen it before, where one of the guys was wearing a GoPro on his head. Coast Guard met us. We hopped onto his boat. That's where I first met Captain Chan. And Captain Chan and two of his crewmen were extremely nice and hospitable to us. They took us up to their Coast Guard station in Kushadasi. I was a little freaked out because although we'd now survived and we'd come away with our lives, I was now worried because now we've got an international incident on our hands. 2 Americans, no passports, no money, and we're in a foreign city. So, however, Captain Chan took us into his office there at the Coast Guard station, gave us refugee clothes, which were ill-fitting but very much needed. We were just in our swim trunks. The OG happened to have a neck knife on at the time, but as we were getting picked up in...
was that your phone?
Yeah,
oh, okay. I thought we ran out of card memory.
Mrs. OG sending me a text message.
Oh, okay.
I just happened to have a neck knife on and swim trunks, flippers, and a swim mask. My daughter Megan, when she was climbing on the sailboat, actually ripped her mask off and let it sink. She was so happy to be back on a boat. So we didn't have much on us. And when we first got into the Coast Guard office, a guy came by and let us use his phone to call the U.S. consulate in Ankara. And the first thing they asked us was, "Are you being detained?" And we said, "No, we're being treated very, very well, extremely hospitable and very, very friendly people." However, we had no shoes, no clothes, no passports, and no money. So we were not exactly free to go tourist shopping in Kushadasi. Beautiful resort town, by the way, if you ever get a chance to swing by. So they take us out on the end of the pier, and they make us a great dinner. Meshoot, my good friend Meshoot, who is the chef on a much larger ship that you'll see in the background of this video right here, this picture. Meshoot brings us out 2 huge meatball sandwiches, Turkish tea, Coke Zeros, and a big bowl of homemade rice. And we have a great picnic out there on the end of the pier. Then, as the sun's going down, another military guy named Hikmet, I'm still in touch with Hikmet all the time. Hello, buddy. He came out. He speaks very great English. He translated for us. He ran into town and got us bags full of snacks and chips and Cokes. And we sat out on the helipad at Kushadasi, the Sahil Guvenlik, the Coast Guard, and we had snacks and watched the sunset with these guys until the sun had gone down. We watched the sunset over the city of Kushadasi. Very beautiful. So several hours later, all of the police agencies in Kushadasi, although the police agencies had swung by, nobody knew what to do with us. Immigration had come out. Nobody knew what to do with us because we had not snuck into Turkey. They knew we were accidentally pulled into Turkey. So they didn't really know how to handle us. They took us to a small police station. We were actually cited, my daughter and I both, a little over 2,000 Turkish lira, which comes into a little bit more than $500 a piece, cited for illegally entering Turkey without a passport. Our guide, a young guy named Ismail Gezgin. Ismail runs a little tour company there on the beach, and Ismail came immediately. He speaks great English. He stuck with us for 4 solid days. He didn't go to work. He didn't go back to his house. He stayed with us for 4 solid days, only going back to sleep when we went to sleep. It was crazy. The hospitality of these people was outrageous, and we would never see such a thing in the U.S. or probably any other country that I've been to. A lot of us think that the Turks, we hear a lot of stories about the Turks and Muslims and this and that, but I'll tell you, everybody I dealt with over there was Muslim, and they were extremely nice, the nicest people I've ever met on earth. So my perspective has changed also. You might notice my little flag here on my Turkish Tauflader shotgun too. That's my little tribute to my boys over there. So Long story short, we go from police station, took us to the hospital for one of three medical checks at the hospital. Very nice, well-apportioned hospital. Took us to a main police station where we spent the better part of the next 3 days. We were guests of the police. We were guests of everyone in Turkey. They told us very clearly, you are not being detained. And we just couldn't leave. On day 3, Mrs. OG was able to come over with my oldest daughter, and they brought us our passports. They brought us a change of clothes. We were able to take a shower, put on our own clothes, and they brought us our cell phones. And that's when my daughter and I started taking these photos that you're seeing here. So photos and videos of all the people that helped us. We were able to get our story out and start texting people back home and letting them know what was going on. This whole time, Mrs. OG, who is a judge, she was on the phone with a whole lot of consulate people. She knows how to talk lawyer, and she got on there and started speaking lawyer with a bunch of these consulate folks and with some of our elected representatives, and was about ready to blow up the world if we weren't released. So Turkey, as it's explained to me by the consulate, is a centralized government. There are 5 offices that have to approve us getting out of Turkey, and 4 of the 5 had done so over the weekend. They realized at some point when faxes of our passports came over that my daughter, Megan, was not yet 18. So we had to go on Saturday to a juvenile court, which miraculously was open on a Saturday. They gave her an attorney, and we went in for a very friendly little hearing where a judge says, absolutely, you're cool to leave Kushadasi. As soon as you have the right permissions, you're free to leave. Our passports arrive on day 2, day 3, somewhere along in there. So we now had passports on us. When Mrs. OG came over, she brought us tons of cash. She hid the cash. She was worried about it being taken from us, so she hid the cash in our clothes. She brought us enough money that we could have bought a boat and snuck out of Turkey back. And in fact, my daughter and I discussed that option at one point when we were a little bit worried that we were going to be held there indefinitely. We talked about how we were going to slip away, jump into a taxi. We now had passports and money, and we were going to find our way to the port and get ourselves surreptitiously back to Greece. So glad we didn't have to take that option. Anyway, we were treated like kings the entire time. They asked us if we wanted food. They showed us where the restroom was in this building. They gave us a tour of the police station. All of the police officers came by to speak with the American police officer. I showed them Jeff's Taufledermaus channel. Everybody was loving that. They were watching videos the whole rest of the weekend. And I pointed out my Turkish shotgun and little Tony, which also comes from Turkey. So we pointed out that we had a lot of Turkish guns in our videos too. So the jail thing comes up where at night we're in a police station sitting in a very nice air-conditioned conference room watching the World Cup games on Turkish TV. However, at night we didn't have any place to sleep. They took us down to jail cells in the basement. And Turkish jails, let me tell you folks, at least on this one, clean as a hospital. Nothing like a U.S. jail. I've been in a lot of U.S. jails. They are filthy. This was perfectly clean, and they had one room, one cell, that had padded mattresses and bunk-style beds. And they put my daughter and I in there with the door left open. We were told, we're not going to lock the door for you. You are guests. You can come and go, walk down to the restroom anytime you like. So every time we left the cell, we waved at the jailer down at the end of the hall. There were other people in that jail and other wings that were not so lucky. They were on hard plastic benches, and they had their doors locked. So we were free to come and go. In the morning, they treated us to really nice Turkish pastries, water, Coke, whatever we wanted. But we spent our days sitting in this conference room waiting for the interior minister to give us the stamp of approval. All of this time, once I got my phone back, we were in touch with the U.S. consulate in Ankara and Izmir. And we had a real nice lady you'll see in the picture here named Guliz Bulsari. Guliz came down, 2.5-hour drive down to Kushadasi, and she worked with the district governor on our behalf to get us released. And at the last minute, we actually had a bingo time that Mrs. OG had. She had all of our legislators in Washington, many of which come from right here in our district. They're more or less friends of ours from school and 4-H and when our kids were growing up. She actually had their phone numbers ready to go. She was starting to make some big-time phone calls. But right at the very last minute, Ms. Bulsari comes from the district governor's office and says, after 4 days of waiting, and when it didn't look very good, she says, we've been given the verbal approval to leave Kushadasi. And they were waiting for the written approval. So in this photo you're going to see here, my daughter and I were taken down to what would you call it, immigration office, where we were again greeted with Turkish tea and snacks and anything we wanted. Extremely friendly people. They had me read a bunch of documents in English. They formally issued me a document that says I was being deported from Turkey. So the OG is now an illegal immigrant. I was deported from Turkey. I was issued another document that I had to sign off that we were allowing them to deport us back to Greece and not fly us back to the U.S. And then I was issued yet another document that says the OG, not my daughter, but the OG was banned from Turkey for 24 months. So I'm at 23 and a half months out before I can come back and see my guys over there. So we were released that night. Immigration lady had to stay with us, so we went down to a very nice hotel. I paid for hotel rooms for everybody. We also took everybody out to dinner who had helped us. You'll see pictures here. Our good friend Ismail made me drink raki, which is some really strong Turkish.
Is that whitish looking stuff?
Yes, they mix it with water, and he made me drink the whole glass. And I am not a drinker, folks, so that was tough to get through. But Turkish food was awesome. You'll see here in the pictures, I had some lamb kebab. My daughter had these little Turkish meat patties that were full of cheese and French fries. I mean, it was excellent food and extremely cheap. So thank you once again, Ismail. When you see this video, that guy stuck with us. And in fact, he started calling me his brother and said that I now had a Muslim brother in Turkey, something I never thought I would be able to say. So my perspective on those folks has changed over there. We were put up in a very, very nice hotel. I ended up paying for the hotel so they didn't have to. You'll see here in the pictures a very nice hotel, air conditioning and everything. And the following morning, the immigration lady and a uniformed police officer met us on the docks. They took us through customs. You'll see Ismail and the police officer and the immigration lady in this picture here standing next to a cruise ship. And they had to watch us physically get on the ferry boat back to Greece. And once it was pulling away from the dock, we were no longer their problem. Megan and I were back in Samos, Greece in about an hour and a half, 2 hours, back with our families. And the final pictures you'll see here, the whole OG family at Maranthakampos, Samos, which is where my great-grandfather comes from. And we're looking down over the village there where he came from, back on Greece, Greek territory. I was free to go, and we left there. We haven't yet paid our fines, so we'll get around to that one of these days here pretty soon.
After your 24 months.
After my 24 months, yeah. So
here's a question. I mean, is Turkey a place you would actually want to go vacation and go back to this place? And
actually, my wife and I have talked about this. We would go back to Turkey tomorrow. Of course, I'm banned. She can go back. Turkey, as we found out, you can come into Turkey for the day just to do shopping, and you have to leave your passport at the port. If you want to come in for more than one night, you have to get a visa from the government. So I will be able to go back to Turkey even before 24 months, but I have to apply for a special visa to come back into the country. Beautiful, beautiful city and beautiful country. And I tell you, folks, I am not exaggerating when I say the nicest people, the most hospitable people I've ever met on this planet. I've had a lot of people that I've come across in my life who more or less look down their nose at Turkish people and Turkish culture and a lot of the Muslim people there. But it was a little unnerving when we were in the police station every night to hear the calls to prayer about 4:30 or 5 p.m. Coming out of the mosque. But as a person who's not grown up around that, a little unnerving, but we could not have been treated better. I told my daughter, we're being treated like the Kardashians here. They brought us food. They brought us Starbucks. Ismail brought us ice cream at midnight. The police officers who were tasked with watching us volunteered to sit up all night if we wanted to stay in the conference room, but allowing them to go home, we just decided, hey, we'll go ahead and go down to the jail and go to sleep for the night so that they can go home to their families because they were volunteering to stick around. They took us on a total of 3 medical checks down at the hospital. That's how concerned they were about our health and safety the entire time. And I tell you what, they provided us with lawyers everywhere we went, and they were just the nicest people on earth. Gave us tea. Something about Turkish culture. Every single time you enter a room, they will offer you a small little glass of hot tea. Doesn't matter if it's 115 degrees outside. They're going to give you a little glass of Turkish tea, and it's really good. It's like the hot tea we serve here in the U.S., but a little bit sweet. So had some great food, met the greatest people on earth. I spent a couple of days when I got back to the OG's job on duty, spent a couple of days ringing a lot of phones over there, speaking with a lot of people who didn't speak English, trying to track down Captain Chan. And eventually I got my phone number to him. He texted me back, so I am now in touch with Captain Chan of the Sahil Güvenlik, and we talk all the time back and forth. Almost every single day he sends me videos of refugees helping pull out of the water and ports that he's been in. Ismail Gezgin has since taken a job with Royal Caribbean on a cruise ship, and so he's all over Italy and Spain now. But I keep in touch with Ismail as if we are family members now. And then, of course, my military friend, Hikmet. Hikmet graduates from the military academy as a lieutenant on August 17th. So everybody wish Hikmet, Hikmet and his wife are both in the same unit in the military. So very, very good people. And I've sent a couple of boxes over there to the sailboat captain and also to these guys full of all kinds of gear just to show my appreciation. And folks, this is going to be on my Turkish shotgun from here on out as a kind of a token of always remembering those guys over here. One of them literally saved our lives, and the rest of them figuratively saved our lives and made our stay, our 4-day detention in Turkey, very, very comfortable for us, and just about as good as you can have it when you're not allowed to leave a country. So we're out, we're free, we're back with our lives. We've learned a little thing about snorkeling in deep water.
Yeah.
Don't do it, folks.
They ought to post some signs or something.
They really ought to. There might have been some signs, but they're written in Greek, and then again, I don't follow even English signs too well. So. Anyway, shout out to my guys over there. You guys are awesome, and I will never forget you. Thanks very much. Thank you also, Tauflater folks, for being concerned. It was really cool that you guys even were interested in this long story. If you're bored to tears now, go ahead and put in your favorite Taylor Swift CD, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.